Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our meeting this afternoon. It's the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee, and I call the meeting to order. Today, we acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and love of all creation. First up, we have the adoption of the agenda. And before doing so, I would ask for the committee's agreement to add right after the deputation by the county that we introduce and hear from our new Director of Planning. So if there's no one opposed to that, then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the agenda. Councillor Doherty, Councillor Hammond, okay. All those in favor? Okay, that is carried, thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none. Any business arising from the previous meeting? Okay, so that takes us right up to deputations. So I'm going to ask Director McDonald to introduce the presentation, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we have Dennis Childs, the Supervisor of Transit and Operations for the County of Simcoe. Dennis will be providing us with an update on the County Links program that will include a Barrie to Collingwood route that will be starting sometime in August, and it could potentially have an impact on our Wasaga Collingwood route as they plan on integrating that into their overall program. But Dennis can go through all that, and maybe at the end we can provide you with a little summary.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the warm introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight in Collingwood. We're just going to talk a little bit about the Simcoe County Links Transit and Overview. We're going to talk about our technology overview, some of the technology that we put into our vehicles. We're going to talk about our safety strategy. We're going to talk about our customer service strategy. We'll talk about the infrastructure requirements, the fare structure, and the next steps. So about a year ago, we actually started our contract, and we actually have a contract with our contract provider. They do an operations and maintenance contract. We started that in April of last year in preparation for our service to begin from Penetanguishene, Midland to Elmville, right into RVH, and that was our first route. It operates 5 days a week. We started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and our first trip leaves from Penetanguishene at that time, and our very last trip leaves from RVH, our Royal Victoria Hospital, at 6:30 in the evening, getting to Penetanguishene just after. It's about an hour and 15 minutes to Penetanguishene. In September of 2018, we also began a specialized transit service, and a specialized transit service is for people with disabilities. It could be a physical disability, it could be an intellectual disability, it can be a cognitive disability as stated under the AODA. And what this service is that basically we will go and pick up the person from their home within 400 kilometers of the route, which will then take them from Penetanguishene to Barrie as we operate. So we operate 400 kilometers of the route. We will pick up in Penetanguishene, go into Midland, we'll go into Elmville, we'll go into RVH and some of the medical centers and RVH. For 2019, we have three new routes. Route 2 is going to run out of Barrie. We're going to come out of the Allendale GO train station. We're going to go along County Road 90. We're going to stop in Angus. After our stop in Angus, we're going to go along County Road 10, make our way up to 26. Along 26, we're going to make a quick stop into Stainer, turn around Stainer, back over to County Road 7, and right down into Wasaga Beach. There'll be approximately 2 buses on that particular route, and the amount of time, or what they call the headway between buses, will be about an hour. Our third route is going to actually operate from Barrie to Aurelia. It's going to go to Lakehead University, Georgian College, down Highway 11. It's going to stop off in Napoleon and then go right into RVH, with the final destination being Georgian College. Route 4 is actually one that I think everybody in this room is familiar with. We'll be taking over responsibility from operating the link bus, which actually operates from Collingwood to Wasaga Beach. So we'll be taking over that route. We'll be operating it exactly the way that it is. We're not really making any changes as we go into that particular route, but we're going to operate through the corridor. That route has been very, very successful, and we want to be able to continue it for it to be successful. So it'll just be a different color bus going up and down the street. And then for routes 2, 3, and 4, we'll also be operating the specialized service. So that'll be 400 kilometers on either side of the route, but we'll be able to service Collingwood and Wasaga Beach, Angus, and Barrie, and we'll be able to take customers between those destinations. It's not a community route where we'll be operating in the community. Part of the overall view of Links Transit is to connect the communities together. Here's some of our target dates. Route 2, our soft launch is going to be Wasaga Beach, Stator, Angus, Barrie to Ellen Neal Station, and that's going to start on Tuesday after the Civic long weekend and holiday. And conventional is just a fancy word for buses we see up and down the street. They're mainly the people get on, put on their fare box, get on and off. They stop at regular transit buses. Sometimes I have to explain the lingo because we do have a certain transit jargon as we're going on. Route 3, again, is going to be a soft launch, going to operate from Aurelia to Barrie to RVH and into Georgian College, and that's going to start too as well. And then Route 4 will be the full launch Collingwood Wasaga Beach link. That's going to start August 6th for the conventional, and we're just going to be basically just taking over that particular route. We'll continue with the fare structure. There's no reason to reintroduce something that really is already there, and we want people to be familiar. We'll talk a little bit more about our smart cards and everything else. And then our full launch of all conventional and specialized services will start in September. The difference between a soft launch and the full launch, the soft launch is we're gonna work out some of those mistakes. One of the philosophies that we have in the transit department is we always want to be able to do one thing better. We've sat down, we've done a lot of planning over for the last year. Going to guarantee you not every part of that plan has been as successful as we want it to be. But this gives us the opportunity to look at our mistakes. How do we make it better? And that's the difference. Important factor, we're actually buying 4 conventional 30-foot buses and 3 35-foot buses. They've been ordered, and we expect delivery them in early June. And that is on schedule, to be honest. The 35-foot buses, excuse me, we're going to be actually using from Aurelia to Barrie because we anticipate that ridership to be really, really strong, and it's just a little larger. We're also buying 2 low-floor Pro Masters that will be able to accommodate 2 wheelchairs, and they'll also be delivered in June of 2018. The buses will accommodate 8 passengers, a number of 2 wheelchairs if necessary, and a number of other passengers that would have a disability. So they don't need a mobility device in any form, but they have a disability that actually allows them to be able to use the system. That's actually just the picture of the Alexander Dennis bus that we're actually getting. Pretty much a standard bus, front doors, back doors. You know what I mean? It has the ability to be able to it's fully accessible underneath the AODA, and it has some great features. This is the current bus that we're actually using on our route number 1 from Penetanguishene to Barrie. It's a vicinity bus. When you actually look at the 2 buses, unless you're really a bus person, you're not going to know notice too much of a difference in the bus. A bus is a bus. It basically people get on and sit down. That's the drawing of actually the ProMaster bus. As you can see, it's a little smaller. It allows us to be able to do that door-to-door service to be able to pick up people with disabilities. That's actually sort of just the map that we're sort of talking about. For Route 2, it's a little difficult to be able to actually, it's actually better on the TV screen than the screen that I'm looking at. It just basically outlines the route that we're going to be operating on. Currently what we're doing is we're working on our timing and our distances and our timing points to make sure that everything is up to stuff. So when we begin our opening in August, it's all working. That's actually the current route, the Route 4, which is the current route. So if you look at it, it's exactly the same amount of route. We're going to be stopping at the same stops. We're going to be operating the same hours of service. With the Route 2, it's important, we'll be connecting with the GO train in Allendale, and for us to be able to do that, our first bus will be leaving Wasaga Beach at 5:30 in the morning. And that'll actually connect us with a couple of the GO trains as they're going into the city of Toronto. That's just the routes as we're expanding. This is the second year of a 5-year plan. The first year has been very, very successful. This is stage number 2. We've been working on stage number 2. About a week after we started we were still finishing up stage number 1 as we were working on stage number 2. There's stage number 3 and stage number 4, and this is sort of what it's going to be able to look like when we go. It's a very aggressive 5-year plan to be able to get all of the routes done. The technology. One of the things that we have on our vehicle is we have an automatic vehicle locator. That's a fancy name for a GPS. It lets us know where the vehicles are, helps us track the vehicles. It provides information to our system so that we can use mobile apps to keep track of the buses, and it gives us a lot of information. We have automatic passenger counters on board our bus. So if I was actually to bring up the system, we could actually show you how many people were on a particular bus at a particular time, where they were getting on and off, and this is in real life information. At the end of the day, what I can do is then produce a report and give you really accurate information of exactly what our ridership is, pretty much fairly quickly. The passenger counters are doing in real live information. The reporting feature isn't available to the next day. We have closed circuit TVs on all of our vehicles for safety. And then I'll talk a little bit more about safety. On our conventional buses, we actually have 7 cameras. We have 1 facing forwards, 1 on the right side and 1 on the left side, and the rest are inside the vehicle. And that just monitors everything that's actually happening in the vehicle. If there's an incident, there's not somebody sitting in a room looking at this, because to be honest with you, it'd be relatively boring. But if there's a problem, what we do is we'll go out to that particular vehicle with a DVR. We'll replace the DVR. Then that information then goes to our clerk's department, and there's a process at the county for actually getting that information. We also use a smart card system. Our fare system is based upon a zone system. So for each zone, we have a different fare. That just makes it, for people who are traveling in the community, for instance, going from Wasaga Beach to Collingwood, the fare is going to be $2. Very easy part of the process. With the actual Link Smart Card, the way that we actually do it now, you tap on the card rather than paying cash. You get a 10% discount if you're an adult and a 15% discount if you're a senior or a student. We also have a 2-way communication system on board our vehicle so that the operators are in constant communication with the control center if there's any incidents or anything that requires any help. That's just the technology of the thing. When you look at the APC, that's the automatic passenger controls. So as people are getting on or off the vehicle, it actually recognizes that the person is getting off. The APC, the sensors update data and it's transferred to a software thing. The AVL system, what it does is it updates the data. We introduced a transit app. So I was in Midland this morning. We were working on just trying to do that one thing better. And I was sitting in the parking lot at Huronia Mall. I checked out my app, and the app said that the bus would be in there in 2 minutes. And I looked at my watch, and it was exactly there in 2 minutes, and I could actually see the bus come right down directly into the mall. So it makes customer service really, really easy. It's a great app. The app is fully accessible, which means that if you turn it on, it'll tell you that the bus is arriving, when's the bus arriving, give you all of that information. It also allows us to be able to put out information when the weather is bad. We know that we had some bad days in winter. We were managed to do pretty good, but when there's a delay to service or the weather gets bad and we need to be able to push that information out to our customers, it goes out onto our website and it also goes out onto our app. So if you were to type in Transit app right now and you look under links, you'll see that the service alert is basically saying we're going to be closed Good Friday. That information out, so it's very, very quick and it goes out very, very quickly. And as I said, the cameras are there and they cover every part of the bus and they cover the outside of the bus. And that's basically for liability. There's carrying lots of people on the bus. People say lots of different things happen on the bus. what it does is it takes the he said, she said situation out of the bus. So even when we have an incident and we get a nice report of what's happening and then you actually look at the video, I can guarantee you it's not always exactly the same as what the video says. One of the things that I've talked about a little bit is safety. So safety is paramount at Simcoe County Lands Transit, and safety is what we define it as freedom from danger and risk. Now, let's be honest, can we be completely safe? Probably not. But I think if we aim to everything that we do to actually reduce safety, it makes our system a far better system. How do we do that? We look at the individual's relationship to the buses and traffic. So when we look at the stops, how does that person relate when they get off the bus? Is there a sidewalk there? Is there a crosswalk there? What are the speed limits? The other thing we look at is how does our bus relate to traffic? When we first, a couple of lessons learned, when we first put our stop at Elmville, there's a really busy gas station in there, has the cheapest gas in town. We put a stop there. I'm going to be honest with you, not a good place to put a stop. All we did is add to the congestion, and when people are going after cheap gas, hang on, right? So one of the things we were able to look at, and the other thing we looked at is pedestrian safety issues. So as much as it's our customer when they get off the bus, we want to make sure when they're getting off the bus that they have a safe place to be able to go to, that it has a sidewalk, that it has an area to be able to look at. One of the other things is when we look at that's safety from a conditions perspective. One of the other things that we've looked at is also safety from a mental health perspective. You know what I mean? Most people, if you ask them why they don't take transit, it's because they're concerned they're going to get lost, they're not going to get help. How to try to get, so really we work with our operators to try to be able to reduce what we are calling psychological safety, to make that journey safe. That really comes into effect when we're dealing with people with that have a disability. They really, you know what I mean? They want to venture out, but they want to make sure that they're getting from point A to point B safely. And how do they do that? So we spend a lot of time working with our specialized customer and our provider on how to be able to do that. Our customer service strategy is safety is first, customer service is next. Everything that we do has to be based on customer service. So general information, a specialized transit, our fare information, our lost and found, and I also talked about our transit app. Our infrastructure, these are our bus stop signs. As again, we look at where bus shelters are going to be, and we also look at our signage on our vehicles too as well. Just a little bit about our fare principles: simple, simplicity, affordable, and consistency. It's based on a zone fare system. So basically, from Collingwood into Wasaga Beach, it'll cost you $6, $2 per zone. And I also mentioned the Smart Card, 10% discount for adults, and a 15% discount for seniors and youths. Moving forward, one of the things that we have to be able to work on is a fare integration system. So with all of our partners within the county that provide community service, we need to create a fare integration system that makes traveling in transit easy and affordable. The customer doesn't care what color bus it is. They don't care whether it's a Caltrans bus, a Wasaga bus. They really don't. They want to be able to do it. So that's one of the challenges moving forward. The smart card system that Collingwood has and Wasaga Beach will actually help and support the development of this system. It makes the system more customer friendly. It also leads to greater use of transit. And ultimately, as people are using transit, it'll also reduce our carbon footprint. And again, that's sort of what it's going to look like in 10 years from now. And is there any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Childs. I think, Brian, did you still want to add something before we open it up for questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just if I can conclude in terms of the system that they're looking at is strictly the Wasaga Collingwood system and not the Blue Mountains link. That is in a different county. It's not, those relationships between us and Gray will continue, and that system will be operated through the town. in its transit systems. The options, we've worked with the county in this whole integration of the Collingwood-Wasaga system, and we've looked at a number of options. Their mandate is community to community. If they were to operate a bus directly to Collingwood, we would have two systems running at the same time, competing with each other. It was felt it would be much more efficient that that the county assume the Wasaga Collingwood link. We've had several meetings with the county, with our partners at Wasaga Beach as well as Clearview, and so this is a collaborative effort to get to the point we are at now. As Dennis said, the transfer or the assumption of the system will be somewhat seamless to the rider as well as to the town, in that they're going to be operating the same system, the same hours, the same bus stops, same fare. And we are working in the background, as Dennis talked about, in terms of this fare integration or our smart card integration, so that someone can use the same card on either transit system. It's just a back end where we have to have monies transferred based on the usage. The county, the transfer will be somewhat seamless too as well. We do have to communicate with our current operator. The county has a different operator, in that we've already started those. Our contract ends this year, so it's a good timing. It ends at the same time. So the other key factor in terms of this is there will be a savings to Collingwood, approximately $100,000 per year, and $105,000 every 5 years for buying a new bus. And that money can go towards a new route within the town. We're planning on implementing a new transit route in the next couple of years. We've got a lot of growth. There's a need for a new route, and this will help offset those additional costs that we anticipate for the new route. So I think that's a summary of, from a staff perspective, of where we're moving forward with this particular cooperative venture.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we'll ask Council for questions. Councillor Hamlin and then Councillor Dory.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions for Mr. Childs. First of all, thank you for your informative presentation. My first question is, there's been a rumor that I must say our residents and businesses and their employees have been so excited about, which is there would be a direct bus from Collingwood to Barrie that might go to RVH and the GO train station and perhaps the college. I can see that wasn't part of your presentation. Is that part of your 10-year plan?
So one of the most important things was making sure that we, it was initially part of our plan, and then through our discussions we decided that it would probably be better for us to be able to take over the Lynx service that's actually walking from Wasaga Beach to Collingwood. Now, once we start to be able to operate and we get the numbers, there is a possibility that it could be a direct service. So it could operate it currently along the link route and then go right into that. We don't have enough information to basically say, yes, we're going to be able to do that. And I would hate to let anybody down and say, yes, we're going to do it, and then not be able to provide it. One of the things that we've done, as we've learned, is it's best for us to be able to take baby steps as we're moving forward, get a really good idea of what the route is, and then continue to develop. As I said, looking at the earlier routes, that's what we've done. It's about continuing to be able to do one thing better. And if we overpromise and underdeliver, that's not a strategy that we thought would be for success over this particular route.
Councillor
my
Hamlin,
second-
sorry, just before you proceed, no, Director McDonald had another comment he wanted to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the key here in terms of the direct route, the Collingwood-Wasaga route operates on a one-hour cycle, half hour at each location. It will be meeting the Barrie to Wasaga bus on the half hour. So in terms of delays, there's minimal delay, overall delay in terms of going from Collingwood to Barrie. In terms of when we did a comparison of a direct bus as opposed to the link bus and having that transfer in Wasaga Beach, it's very minimal, like 5-10 minutes in terms of potential delay, and the schedule will be such that our hour cycle will meet their hour cycle at Wasaga Beach, so it should be a seamless transfer from the Collingwood bus to the Barrie bus.
That was really my second question, whether Route 2 would match up with Route 4. And so maybe I'll just ask them, how long would that trip be then from Collingwood to Barrie if one was to?
So we're thinking that the trip would be roughly about the same, right? Just over an hour and 15. We really have to sit down and do the finalization of actually the timing and exactly. But that's really what we're figuring. When we talked about leaving Wasaga Beach at 5:30 in the morning, that really will get us. What we were anticipating is getting us to Barrie about 6:45 in the morning, which we'll be able to catch the 7 o'clock GO train station. As we continue to be able to work out all of these processes, we'll be better. Once we get the bus, we'll actually be able to drive the route. It's a little difficult to actually do it in a car. A car and a bus really aren't exactly the same. A bus moves a little bit slower. You can do it by Google, and Google will tell you that it's exactly this, but my experience has proven to me that a bus moves just a little bit slower. We also have to take into account how much time at each stop we're going to take to pick up and drop off customers. And we still don't know that yet until we actually do it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty?
Thank you very much. Councillor Hamlin covered off a couple of my questions. And actually, this would be through you, I think, to Director McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
What is the current time of service for the Collingwood-Wasaga Link bus? What hours of the day?
Through the chair, sorry, I don't have, I got my schedule here, just I don't have that to memory. You know, I can't remember, I can't see it here in the schedule.
Brian, may I? So the Collingwood bus, actually for the Collingwood Link, it leaves at Collingwood at 6 o'clock in the morning, with the last trip leaving in the evening at 9 o'clock at night. Does the round trip and then is back into Collingwood at 10 o'clock.
Thank you. So through you, so there'll be no change to that service?
There'll be no change to that service. Now, it's important to realize that when we're operated the Penetang to Barrie route, we operated Monday to Friday. Mm-hmm. So the Route 2 from Allendale to Wasaga Beach has been scheduled to run Monday to Friday, while the Wasaga Beach Link is going to continue to run 365 days of the year. And that's an important thing to be able to note as part of the process. We don't know. What we know is right now there's not sufficient amount of customers to actually operate Saturdays and Sundays on a route number 1. We won't know that until we get up and operating route number 2. If there's a demand, then we'll increase the service as required.
Thank you. So, if I may, just one other question. So, if the Link bus leaves Collingwood at 6, so it would connect with the Wasaga Beach bus
At 6:30.
at 6:30. So it would it still make a GO train?
It probably might make the very last GO train, but what we wanted to make sure is that at least it met the first train, right? Because we're trying to hook up our service with the existing service. And right now it might be a little tight, but until we actually do it, I'm not too sure on that, right? I wish I could give you a definite answer, but it's going to be as we run through practice, right? So even though, but just maybe backtrack. Once we bring somebody into Allendale Station, there is connections there for GO Transit that'll actually take them down into the city. So right now, what happens is the GO bus runs between Allendale Station and Aurora, at which time they actually connect up with the GO train. The difference in actual amount of time is 10 minutes, right? It's a 10-minute extra ride rather than by that in the whole round trip, just because of the way that the timing works. So, and the reason that Go Transit is using the bus is because the ridership numbers are not there yet with the train service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mayor Saunderson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I think it's certainly a great development, having been part of the County Council the last time. The collaboration that's gone to this has been quite quick. I think we passed the resolution maybe 3 years ago, and already we now did the transit study and now have the routes in action. So to see routes 2 and 4 come online together, and then the potential savings that over time over 4 years, I think will be almost $500,000, which will allow us to focus on other routes in our community, is a great step forward. And so certainly thank you to the county for this, but it has been a collaborative effort. And so in that vein, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if it would be useful for this standing committee to pass a recommendation that we can include in the staff report, so that when this comes to council, we can approve it, just to show that that it has been a collaborative effort, that our department has been working very closely and making sure that this is the best possible outcome for our community.
Okay.
So I would certainly put that on the floor and move it.
Okay, I certainly think that'll be appropriate at this time. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hall. Any other comments? Because I know that the Deputy Mayor had another question as well, but we could do it in the context of the recommendation for sure. Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Childs. I had a couple of questions regarding the accessible bus, the smaller transit bus. I apologize, I didn't understand. When you referred to the current bus that's in operation, you mentioned Penetanguishene and then 400 kilometers.
Right.
So in the context of a resident in Collingwood that would like to utilize this service, what's the 400 kilometers? Is that a radius, or is that?
So along the actual route itself is 400 kilometers. One of the things looking at it is we service all of Penetanguishene, we service all of Midland. Going forward, we would service all of Collingwood, and they'd be able to have that connection to a link to another community. We're not responsible, we wouldn't do the community service within Collingwood, so a customer couldn't go from point A in Collingwood to point B in Collingwood. If they wanted to basically go from Collingwood to Wasaga Beach, we could do that, or Collingwood to Stainer, or Collingwood to Angus. That's the connection of the service. Each transit property has their own specialized service.
And maybe just a quick follow-up. You mentioned it carries 8.
Yes.
So if a patron had somebody who was with them who is a support person but an able-bodied person, are they able to travel at the same time?
So underneath the rules of the ridership, so a customer that requires that companion, when we actually register, they actually state that they need to have a companion. That companion actually rides for free. Because they're there to assist the person with the disability. If a passenger wants to ride in the bus, when the customer books the ride, they also book for the passenger, and depending upon availability, the customer. But when that is part of the booking process, we actually look at all of that. So a customer can ride the vehicle with a disability and then bring along another customer that's able-bodied, as long as there's a seat available for that customer.
Okay, just one question, Mr. Charles. I was just wondering, do the new buses on the links still have the bicycle carriers on?
Yes, so the conventional buses have the ability to actually carry 2 buses up at the front. There's a bike rack that actually goes down. The customer is responsible for loading and unloading their bicycle, but it'll lock it into place. It's fairly secure. We really haven't had any bicycles fall off. It's a very secure system.
Okay. That's great, thank you. All right, so if there's no other questions, then I'll ask for the vote on the recommendation of support. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Speak
Have
to
a
us.
good evening.
Yeah. So next, it is my pleasure to welcome our new Director of Planning, Adam Farr, to address the committee. We have the benefit this evening of having both our former Director of Planning, Nancy Herr, and our new, so we have a lot of wisdom here tonight in the overlap period. So, Director, if you'd like to have some comments and maybe give us a little bit of your background and whatever you'd like to kind of give to us tonight.
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm excited to join the town of Collingwood. I'm especially appreciative of the opportunity to work with outgoing planning director Nancy Farrar prior to her retirement at the end of the month. It's immediately apparent that Nancy's contributions to the town are significant and that she's assembled and led a very capable team. And we're actually sharing the same office right now, so I'm sure she'll be happy to be rid of my incessant questions. But I'll be working closely with my team to come up to speed quickly on issues in planning and building services. With the corporate realignment, my portfolio will also include bylaw enforcement and economic development, and I'm looking forward to working with the staff in these divisions. Briefly, my background. I have 23 years of experience in urban planning, and I've worked on a number of communities across Canada, including both Alberta and Ontario. I have a varied background that includes policy work, development review, project management experience. I have a particular interest in some areas of interest to Collingwood, downtown planning, urban design, customer service, economic development, and environmental planning, among other things. My goals with the committee are to work with staff to assist in delivering council and corporate priorities, providing recommendations and advice on development and related matters, provide updates on legislation and deal with other matters as required. My first week was quite busy here as I got settled, and I'm looking forward to meeting residents and business owners in the town, other folks. I'm especially excited about my future career with the town, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Farr. Welcome to our team, and we look forward to working with you as our support on this committee as well. Thank you. All right, so that brings us to staff reports. 6.1 P 2019-18 Site Plan Control Agreement, Metabuzz Medical Cannabis Facility at 135 Sanford Fleming Street. And if I'm assuming one of our tandem over there are going to set us up for this.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and because Adam's in day 6, I'm going to try and do what I can to help him out this evening. It certainly is a pleasure to have him on board, and I think he's doing his very best to try and catch up with as much as he can as quickly as he can. So we'll start with the Metabuzz Site Plan Control Agreement. This is it's a approximately 50,000 square foot building on a 4.9 acre site. Let's see, there's the site. The site is on Sanford Fleming Drive. In this particular case, there was not an issue as far as tree removal. The trees were gone some time ago. So it's not one that we've had to come to council and ask about tree removal. There's a site plan. The building is located, or is proposed to be located fairly close to the road with a couple of rows of parking in front of the building. There's just an enlargement of the plan and showing the landscaping. There's some architectural elevations in the proposed building. And as noted, there is security fencing that will be involved with this building as well. Anyway, Madam Chair, as I said, it's about a 50,000 square foot building on a 4.9 acre site or 2 hectare site. There's no particular special conditions that are involved in this one that I feel at this point we need to bring to the committee's attention, but Madam Chair will be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the public in the gallery here who would like to come and address this staff report?
Sure.
Yeah, please come forward, introduce yourself.
I'm Michael Kutsoulias. I'm the architect involved on this project, representing the Metabuzz Corporation.
Right, okay, all right, that's great. So if we have any questions, we know you're here. Okay, all right. All right, so if there's no one else who wishing to speak to the matter, I will put the recommendation on the floor that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. Staff recommendation, the staff report P 2019-18 be received and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the Metabuzz Medical Cannabis Production Facility to be located at 135 Sanford Fleming Drive. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Hamlin. Questions? Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. My first question is, are there federal regulations that require licensing of this facility, or I just don't
Yeah, and who would
understand the
you-
process now.
Who should I put that question through to? You? Nancy?
Madam Chair, I would think it would be perhaps one of the owners or representatives of the owners who could best answer that question. It's my understanding that there is, but I would have to say that's not our area of expertise.
Hi, my name is Kudav. I'm one of the directors of the company. Yeah, we have obtained a pre-approval from Health Canada. So there are certain regulations involved, and then we went through everything, and then final is like to build the facility, and then they come for final inspection, and then we grant the license.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask a few more questions?
Sure. How many do you have?
About 3. Okay. But before I get to the next one, I just wanted to say thank you for the extensive landscaping around the building. It looks like it's going to be beautiful. I noticed that, and I didn't know if this was just a regular clause in the site plan agreement, but there was reference to blasting being required. Maybe this is a question for Mr. McDonald, Madam Chair.
Okay. Appropriate staff. Director McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a standard clause. If blasting is required, there's procedures and protocols that they must follow. It's not anticipated that rock is at any elevations in this particular application that would require that, so I don't think we'll be utilizing that standard clause.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and this, I believe this may be through you to Director McDonald. And there's a reference to special terms and conditions, and specifically construct and install external services. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. What's involved with that?
Again, I believe this is a standard clause. Most of the infrastructure is in place on this particular application. There may be a connection to a water main or something as simple as that. There's nothing extraordinary about this particular application.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, no? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. That's fine. All right, so we have the motion on the floor, and I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And then moving on to 6.2, P 2019-19, the Shipyard Side Launch 2 zoning bylaw amendment. Nancy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. If we could perhaps bring up, I believe we have some slides for that one. Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm sure
That's
I'll just
okay.
be a... All right. Go to shipyards. There, thank you very much. Okay, so this indicates where the property is located. The property is, if anybody knows where the existing side launch apartment building is, this property is immediately to the south of the side launch building. And it really sort of finishes off this block, or this portion of this block in the shipyard's development. Okay, so what is proposed is a series of 11 townhouse units, and the 11 townhouse units will actually have frontage on the, as much of their frontage would be on the promenade as I would say it would be anywhere, and then the side, there we are, that's what they'll look like from the promenade. All right, there's the back of the buildings that will face onto Emerson Lane, where there's a double garage, and in addition to the double garage, there's 2 parking spaces outside of the garage, so that each unit would have 4 parking spaces. Just a building from the side. That would be what the building would look like from side launch way. Okay, so Madam Chair, as I said, we have 11 units. We're actually taking this property out of the former zone, which would have permitted the side launch, another side launch building, because of the change in the plan. And in this case, we're substituting that for the plan that would show the 11 townhouse units. And Madam Chair, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come up and address this item? Welcome.
Bennett McNeil, I'm with the developer Fram Building Group.
Right, any specific comments, or you would just know that you're available to answer any questions?
I guess I would say the basis for moving the zoning forward is now that we're into the, well, hopefully, good weather. We want to take advantage of that, get a shovel in the ground sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And site plan will follow next month. And those plans are already with planning, the final plans, and we'll be hopefully pulling a conditional permit. And the purpose of this zoning is to allow for that appeal period to lapse and allow for that permit to come into place rather than going forward with site plan next month and then waiting an additional month and losing half the season. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that explanation, and we appreciate that you're here if we have any questions.
Yep.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Matthew, please come forward.
Hi there. May I ask a point of clarification?
Certainly.
Is the 5-minute delegation at the end of the meeting still on?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make mention of the prior agenda item. With regards to the shipyards here, I was here last time in the town here, and I was just wondering, will there be any change in access for the general walkway from downtown across to the dock? When will we see the paving finish on Side Launch Way? Like, I know we're still under construction, so my question would be, when would this development finish? Because I know the townhouses are almost closing. They've been working on those for about a year or two. When will we see the skirt around the road come up to grade? There's a lot of potholes around grade, storm drainage areas, stuff like that. There's some low areas from the downtown crossing to the actual, the walkway area, plus in the parking scheme. When will we see that finish and make it up to, the second point of level surface?
Okay.
How long would this take to complete?
All right, I will put that question through to Director McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The top surface asphalt is not normally completed until the development of the particular blocks or lots, whatever they may be, have been completed and the construction is finished. We don't want to put down or have them put down fresh top asphalt and have construction equipment running over it. So timing is dependent on the build out. I think that the build out of North Maple, Wheelhouse Lane, and North Pine will be completed within this year, and it's quite possible that the developer could be in a position to complete the top asphalt on those. Side Launch Way, however, there is still a couple of blocks to be completed on that, and we would not recommend that they do the top asphalt until those sites are developed.
Okay, thank you, Director McDonald. All right, so if there's no one else from the public wishing to speak to this, I'm going to put the recommendation on the floor that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council, that Staff Report P 2019-19 be received and Council enact and pass and amending zoning bylaw for a proposed townhouse development located within the Shipyard Side Launch 2 development. Mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Mayor Saunderson, any other questions from council members? Committee members, whatever we are.
Thank you very much,
Councillor Doherty.
Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. First of all, I note that there will be a reduction in the minimum front yard setback and also in the minimum landscape area. And I'm just wondering, is that consistent with some of the other blocks of the development? I know that we have passed some reductions in minimum front yard area previously. I just want to get a perspective how this compares to other blocks that are currently finished.
Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Doherty, yes, this is actually, it's the same front yard as is in the block that's directly to the west of this particular development. In that one as well, the minimum front yard is 2.9 meters. So we're the same setback. Generally speaking, these townhouse units, and now they've built a number of blocks of these townhouses, the front yards generally are around 2 meters for all of those. It just happens the landscaped open space, and I did bring it, the landscaped open space for the block beside this one is actually lower. It's at 21%, so this one's actually doing better as far as landscaping than the block beside.
Okay, thank you. Second question, I was wondering if we could just put up the renderings, the elevations. I just was curious as to the materials that are being used.
It's a combination of a brick facade with some precast around the doors, and then at the third level there, it's a hardy board, a fiber cement board. So it's a high-end siding. And then that middle unit there, just for some separation to break up the space, it's just an off-color brick as well. And then the railings will be some sort of glazing. And in terms of the materiality, yeah, that's where we're staying. And then with the windows, we've tried to kind of keep consistent with that industrial shipyard look. Beyond that, yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Thank you, and just through to Nancy as well, my understanding is that it's consistent with the original plans in terms of our urban design manual and the plans for the waterfront, so it's all being consistently carried through. Correct? Yeah. Okay. And another question?
Yes, just one last question. So we're being asked to pass a zoning bylaw amendment in advance of a site plan control. Is this an exceptional ask? Have we done this before?
Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Doherty, in most cases we have dealt with both the site plan and the zoning of the shipyards at one time. In this case, the site plan drawings are very advanced, so it's not that we've got a first submission. We are past first submission, we've got second submission, and we're virtually there as far as having a site plan agreement. We're very close. So from a staff perspective, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Doherty, we are comfortable recommending that this, the final design, we're there. So we are not going to be changing this design. It has been circulated to all of the departments. All of the departments have commented on this proposal, and therefore it's really just a matter of some paperwork before it gets finalized, signed, and brought before council.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very good to see this project moving forward.
Mayor Saunderson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Nancy. When I look at this application, it's an unusual application in the sense that it's actually scaling back the load on the land there. My understanding is the site plan control approval in February 2009 allowed for an apartment building that was going to have 39 dwelling units and approximately 1,750 square feet of commercial space down. below. So I would think that this is actually a significant scaling back of the load that's going to be on that area with 11 townhomes. Is that right?
Madam Chair, through you to Mayor Saunderson, you're absolutely correct. From a traffic perspective and from, I'm sure, a use of services, this is actually a reduction from what was originally proposed on this site.
And they had site plan approval back in February of 2009. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Hammond?
Yes, I have a few questions. Where is the frontage of this building that's going to be reduced, or proposed to be reduced? Is it on the side launch?
Yeah.
On
it's
the
along
waterfront?
No, it's along Side Launch Way, so it would be on the south end of the site. So on the bottom of the screen,
Yes.
that's where the setback is reduced.
So the individual townhomes, what is there in each of their frontages? Do they don't have a frontage because it's a condo plan? Is that?
Well, we meet on the other sides of the building. We meet the minimum requirements. So we're asking for a relief on
the
just
south
on the
side?
south side. Yeah.
And what is the setback just from the water side then?
Is it 7.5 meters?
Madam Chair, just it would be at least 6 meters from the town promenade that they would have to have in our setback. And the 7.5 meters would be actually to the north, so the 7.5 meters is the rear yard, and that would be opposite the front yard. And Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Hamblin, yes, the front yard is the only real public frontage in this project, which is Side Launch Way.
Okay, thank you. And also through you, Madam Chair, the part of what we're being asked to do is to change the map that showed originally the two apartment buildings on the site, to remove the one where these townhouses will go. And so what it showed was the building envelopes. And so my question is, how does this compare, like these 11 townhomes, how does their building envelope compare to what was, you know, in the zoning bylaw originally? Because it was all lined up with the apartment building to the north, and I just want to know how that's going to work.
Madam Chair, and Adam, I believe there should be a, in your little file, a document that would show that. It should be just a doc. There we go. All right, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Hamlin, the front of the building, as far as lining up along the public walkway, it will virtually line up along the public walkway. So we will have virtually the same setback between the side launch building and these townhouses along the public walkway.
And what about at the rear? Well, not the rear, I don't know what you would call it. I'll say the west side of the building. Through you, Madam Chair.
Through Madam Chair, I think this property perhaps would be a little closer to the lot line between the two condo corps, but there again, it is still taking into account there's a sort of a compass feature, and that is being maintained. So the compass feature, I'll describe it, is maintained, and that the new housing is to the south of the compass feature, so that particular aspect is not interrupted by this new development.
Thank you.
And if I can add to that too, with that compass feature, there's going to be an addition of an AODA ramp now that's accessible from our site to the waterfront trail.
Okay, well that's great. Also, I'm just curious about, Madam Chair, the architectural guidelines, design guidelines, because this site was conceived, as we've been told, as an apartment building. And I'd just like to know how the townhomes, as proposed, would comply with the architectural design guidelines for this area.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. There are special design guidelines, as I'm sure everyone is aware, for the shipyards that talk about materials and style of buildings and characteristics that the shipyard's development is to be in complement and be in keeping with. This particular design has been reviewed by the architects in accordance with the design guidelines and the shipyard's master plan, which was probably set at this point, 12 years ago, something like that. Anyway, it is viewed as being in keeping with those guidelines that have been set for the shipyard's property and the master plan that is in keeping with the property. That is the reason that this building looks a little different from the other buildings. The bungalofts, it has not got a residential type roof, it's got more of an industrial type flat roof, for example.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, who is it exactly who would have said that this complies with those guidelines?
Nancy?
Madam Chair, I believe that was staff that took a look at that. I'm not the file manager, but it's my understanding, I believe that staff took a look at the style of the building and determined that we felt it was an appropriate interpretation of the guidelines for this property.
I don't try to be difficult, but through you, Madam Chair, I thought I heard that an architect signed off on this, and I don't know, do we have an architect on staff?
No, Madam Chair, the architect would have actually created the drawings. I'm sorry if no, the architect created the drawings, looking at the guidelines, because there is one architect that has done, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Hanlon, all of the work on the shipyards, I believe, has been done basically by the same firm. So that architect would have looked at those guidelines, and then we as town staff also looked at the product and were of the opinion that it is in keeping with what's been established.
Yeah, as part of the submission requirements, we have to provide a letter from the architect and how we addressed all these guideline items.
Okay, that's great. And then my last comment is...
Before you go ahead, Deputy Mayor Hall had a question, I think, or a comment specific to that point.
Yeah, maybe if I could just offer a point of clarification. It's unfortunate we can't bring it up, but the new Shipyards website has a fantastic rendering. And the rendering, the artist concept actually for this particular building, the physical building is now 11 units, but the building itself from an architectural standpoint, in my opinion, is not that much different from the original vision for what was the two buildings that were going to flank the promenade. I did have maybe one question specific to that because it is a key difference. The building that's on the north end, if I'm walking along the promenade, has about a 3-foot level and then the front yard into the unit to the homeowner itself. This building, though, appears that you can walk directly from the promenade into the unit. Is that correct?
No, so we're going to match that existing masonry wall all the way to the column at the entrance of the waterfront park.
Thank you for that clarification.
So it'll be essentially identical in terms of the treatment and all the landscaping.
Councillor Hammond, your last question?
Oh, sorry, it's more of, thank you, Madam Chair. It's more of a comment, and as been discussed, in the report, it mentions that the zone provisions and what's before us tonight is really to implement the site plan drawings that aren't before us tonight. And I hear the urgency to be able to get a shovel in the ground. And I also heard our, I guess, former planning director speak to staff's review this. But I just have to say that as much as I'm otherwise satisfied, we do not have these site plans before us. And I just feel it would be remiss as a council, a committee and a council, to be approving a bylaw implementing a site plan when we don't have the site plan in front of us. Now, having said that, I'm not opposed to making sure this moves quickly, and if things are moving as fast as they are, perhaps if the rest of the committee was of a mind to agree with me, Perhaps this, my final comment would be this could be attached to a council meeting like before the next council meeting if it was ready, you know, at a 4 o'clock meeting or something like that. I just find this highly irregular. That's my, and so I'd be asking that this be deferred until we have the site plan before us.
Okay, so before I ask if there's a seconder, yes?
Well, just if I may, typically, you know, this is not uncommon in other areas to move forward the zoning, but just to kind of clarify, the final site plan submission, the final drawings are sitting with planning and development. So we have addressed all the comments and they're essentially just waiting for the signed agreement to get back to them. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get all the signatures from our mortgagees in time to meet this meeting's requirements. But we just, again, to move the process forward with no changes, that's why we're here today, to allow for a conditional building permit following a 20-day appeal period. So the design is finalized, the site plan will remain the same, and no further changes will come following this meeting.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so if there is a seconder for Councillor Hamlin's deferral? Okay, seeing none, then we'll revert back to the original recommendation, which I don't think I need to read again. So all those in favor? Opposed? So noted. Okay, thank you very much for your help. All right, so now we're moving on to agenda item 6.3, P2019-20, risk management, the official inspector for source water protection. And Nancy, I'll ask you to give us a little summary of this, please.
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair. This report was prepared by Robin Schugan, the first one she's ever done. And what she is asking council is to whether that she could be appointed as our risk management officer inspector. She has taken all of the training, and this is a function that previously was done by or contracted with the Noasaga Valley Conservation Authority. We did have there was a cost involved. Fortunately, we had a grant that covered that cost, but the days of the grant are behind us. And therefore, now that we no longer have a grant, it is a function that we would like to bring in-house and save the town a bit of money. It is something that we are required to have under the Clean Water Act. So, Madam Chair, I would just like to appoint Robin to this position for the town.
Okay, thank you for that update. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, the recommendation is as follows. That the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. That staff report P2019-20 be received and council appoints Ms. Robin Schugan as the risk management official and inspector for the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Water Protection Plan for the town of Collingwood in accordance with Part 4 of the Clean Water Act 2006. Have a mover and a seconder, please. Mayor Saunderson, Deputy Mayor Hall. Any comments or questions? Mayor Saunderson?
Well, congratulations to Robin. I think she's already on our staff, so that's there's no financial implications, and now we're saving money by not paying someone else to do it. And Robin's taken the initiative to go and get the training, so I definitely support moving Robin into this position. She'll be a great fit.
Perfect comments, thank you. All right, I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. 6.4, 2019-21, the proposed amendment to the wellhead protection areas and contaminated sites sections of the official plan. Nancy, you taking us away?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a report that actually comes out of a public meeting that was held some months ago, but we have been working with the county and with the NVCA and with our own engineering staff to ensure that everyone is satisfied with the proposed amendments to our source water, or to our official plan to address source water protection. There is only one change to the schedule. Actually, there's the insertion of a new schedule, which, Adam, you just had the new schedule up. If you could put Schedule G back up again, please. Great. Okay. There are a number of aspects to source water protection in the town of Collingwood. As I believe everyone knows, our water comes from a pipe out in Georgian Bay. So one aspect of keeping our water supply safe is ensuring that there's nothing that happens out in our harbor that would affect our water supply. So that has to do with where we may or may not be, for example, selling gas or having marinas that sell gas. And that's something that is certainly has to be controlled and monitored in our harbor based on the location of our source water outlet. Some of the other things that come into play, there is one small wellhead protection area in the town of Collingwood. The well itself is actually located in Clearview Township, but the protection area, it's on the well is on the 6th Street, on the south side of 6th out by Osler Bluff Road, but the wellhead protection area actually crosses over into the town of Collingwood in a small area, so we do have to be concerned about protecting that area and what uses may occur out in that area. It is a rural area from our point of view, so there's not much that's happening out there anyway. The other aspects of source water protection that are involved in this report include highly vulnerable aquifers, and that's again areas where we should be concerned about certain uses, for example, storage of fuels that may be occurring in those areas. And in addition to that, the county has identified significant groundwater recharge areas, and those are other areas of the municipality where we do have to be careful about trying to have some controls over the amount and kind of impermeable surfaces that we will be creating, and watch those. So these maps, they're not just ours, they're already in the Simcoe County plan. They have been for some time. The county is interested in us incorporating them into our own plan. They're also in the source water protection documents that have been approved by the province and were created by the Nossauga Valley Conservation Authority and the Grey Sabo Conservation Authority. So this is really just the town doing and putting in its documents what is already found in the other upper tier documents. In addition to that, there's some other policies that we have put into this official plan amendment. Some of them have to do with our contaminated lands policies. These are being cleaned up. We knew that this was something that needed to be done. And there's some other policies that frankly, they are not maybe working as well as we should. We decided to clean those up. These were all circulated and all part of the public meeting that we held last July, and we'd like to get on with them at this point. I guess this is sort of one of my, I'll call it a cleanup file. It's one I worked on for quite some time, and I thought I'd get it done before I left. Anyway, Madam Chair, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nancy, for the overview. I don't know if there's anyone in the public who would like to come forward and address this agenda item. Matthew?
Just a general comment. According to a town council meeting about 2 weeks ago, there's a proposal for housing development alongside the Silver Creek wetlands, which is a significant wetland because they do call it a recharge zone. And recharge zones are areas that have significant wetland mixed with another body of water. So Georgian Bay, as we know, is a very large body of water. This recharge zone is something where an ecology meets with another ecology. And basically, I have a question regarding future marinas. There she is. Mrs. Farr, Director Farr, and your associate. Would you say that all marinas in the future should have some sort of a, like, you know, Blue Shores and Mariners Haven? They have an extensive rock wall, and there's all these sort of rock wall areas outside of the existing shoreline, the natural shoreline. So, for example, if the town had proposals for future marinas, and hopefully a reduction of marina technology, you know, you get some of these marinas that are retooling motors and doing all kinds of works on boats. What's the standard for the town to allow marinas to be built and operated within this, you know, this, what do we call this, a watershed or the water protection area? My question is for these connection points of natural ecology with man-made marinas. What's the requirement for someone to build a marina?
Thank you for your question, Matthew. Nancy, do you have a response there?
Madam Chair, I'll try. I'm certainly, anything that is happening in the water not only needs approval from the town of Collingwood, but would also need approval from other levels of government. So if it is something that's happening in the water, then you always have the Conservation Authority, and you often have DFO and other agencies involved. So, and certainly, as we said, we have an inspector now appointed to look after our source water protection, and then the other levels as well would be required to support any kind of new development that would be happening along our shoreline.
Just to follow that up, if I have a minute, such as Blue Shores and other places like Mariners Cove, would a developer have to have a certain amount of structure in place to put in a marina with a gas station?
Madam Chair, to Matthew, I'm sorry, I don't know the specifics as to how that would work. I'm sorry, I'm not a designer.
Yeah, so it's a case by case basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's my question.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So we will now consider it as a committee, P 2019-21, that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council. The staff report P 2019-21 be received and Council adopt the official plan amendment to the wellhead protection areas and contaminated site sections within the Town of Collingwood official plan. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Doherty, Deputy Mayor Hall. And any questions from committee members? Councillor Hanlon?
Sorry, my question, Madam Chair, relates to the last part of the recommendation, which is in other general amendments. There's a recommendation here for site-specific zoning for 500 Ontario's, not zoning, pardon me, official plan amendment for 500 Ontario Street, and I'm just wondering if that was part of a public meeting. That's my first question. And secondly, is whether there's site-specific zoning in place for that site with respect to its medical uses.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
Madam Chair, yes and yes. Actually, this went through its own special site-specific official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment process, Madam Chair, a number of years ago. I could dig out exactly when. And then we were doing an update to our residential section in total, and apparently we forgot that paragraph, so we're putting it back in, but it is a reinsertion of something that was in the official plan and went through a full public process in the past, and it was also dealt with at the July public meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any other, oh yes, Councillor Doherty.
Yes, thank you. And I think this would be through you to Director Farrar. If I'm looking at the map, am I right in saying that most of the town of Collingwood is on a highly vulnerable aquifer?
Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Doherty, if you're not a highly vulnerable aquifer, you're a significant recharge area. So that's actually, most of the town is either one or the other. You're absolutely correct. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, then all in favor of the recommendation? That is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, staff. So now we're on to reports and minutes of other committees and boards, and we have the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes, and I don't see anyone here from the committee or wishing to speak from the public on this. So the recommendation is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes of April 3rd, 2019 to the next meeting of council. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Doherty, Deputy Mayor Hall, any questions or comments with respect to the minutes? Seeing none, oh sorry, Deputy Mayor.
I had a very quick question, maybe through you to planning, and it had to do specifically with the Victoria Annex and the matter that's before LPAD. Is there an update that could be provided specifically to this committee? And if the answer is no, that's okay.
Madam Chair, if I could perhaps provide an update next week, because I know we're talking to the lawyers on Wednesday, so if perhaps at our next meeting we could have an update. That would be great.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so all those, oh sorry.
Sorry, I just have one question. There's reference in the Heritage Committee meeting minutes to the Heritage Rebate Program and increasing it to 20%. And I'm just wondering what the status of that is, or if this is just something being discussed at this particular committee.
It hasn't come up as a formal recommendation as a result of the minutes, but I'll ask Nancy to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Hamlin. It's something that would not be coming really until next year's budget, so that certainly the committee has been informed that this year's budget is set, but if they would like to come up with a recommendation and then ask that for an increase in funds for the 2020 budget, that's how it would be approached.
Thank you very much.
All right, so all those in favor of the minutes, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We have reference to a departmental update, but I think it might have been a carry forward from the last agenda.
Madam Chair, I have, sorry to keep butting in,
No?
but I had a brief update and a brief email from Mr. Miller, and he'd just like to let the committee know, if I perhaps could, that we are up to $64 million worth of construction so far this year. And just for a point of reference, I think last year we were at 79 for the entire year. So the building department is incredibly busy. They are expecting, based on the permits that are on their desks, that they'll be at approximately 100 million by the end of the month. Which is, our highest year ever, I think, was 115 million for the year.
Okay.
So we just wanted to give you an indication that.
Yeah. So we just wave when we're going by building, we just don't stop and just, right. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so other departmental updates, Director McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few verbal updates.
Sure.
I just thought it would be helpful for the committee to know that I think that the weekend snow is our last, I'm hoping, and that we will be starting street sweeping this week. We've already run the bike lanes on our major roads to pick up the bulk of the sand. We'll have to come around after and do a complete job, but it's just an intention to get the bulk up. We have 3 rented sweepers starting in residential areas, and the town's crew will be working on the main streets with our full crew, where we sweep the boulevards out to the road and pick up the sand. The town generator project will be starting shortly. That's the emergency generator for this building. In addition, the restoration excuse me, of the brick on the town hall will be starting in May and June. Will be starting in May and going through to June. Both those projects will have to, from a timing perspective, will have to be coordinated with the judicial inquiry, so there isn't disruption to the proceedings. And I had a couple, Peggy had a couple of just brief information on the water department as well.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you way back there. Welcome, Manager Slama.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a few updates, verbal updates as well. I wanted to mention for community awareness, we're hosting a information session with our irrigation customers on Wednesday afternoon. What we've done is we've invited irrigation contractors, property managers, and representatives from condo boards. And this is part of just, we wanted to increase the awareness of the external watering restrictions that we have in our water bylaw, which is just watering every other day. But knowing that preserving our water capacity is of most interest, we thought we'd target this year, talk to our irrigation customers and try to see if we could see a reduction in water use for those in particular. Also, we will be beginning our spring flushing on the east end of town this week. So we've got a notice in the newspaper about that, but wanted to mention that to the committee. And a couple of quick good news stories, or what I think are good news stories, following our budget process. Last year, for our lab services, we operations took a review of the water testing and wastewater testing that we complete in the departments. And we saw that we were completing more tests than we needed to meet the regulations. So we've reduced the number of tests we're doing, and then we also went out to procure laboratory services. And we've just completed that procurement process, and we'll be awarding new contracts to new laboratories, certified laboratories. And we're going to see a reduction annually of approximately $80,000. We were looking, this cost for water and wastewater was approximately $140,000, and we're going to be paying around $50,000. So we're quite pleased with that result, and assistance from the procurement department with that. And also our UV project continues to move along at the wastewater plant. We're not quite done, but they're working hard. We've got some really hard concrete there that they've been chipping away at apparently for 3 weeks. But Manager Glenn Price has already noticed a significant reduction in his energy costs because we are operating off of a temporary unit while we're installing the new unit. So we're quite excited. We know that we're going to see significant energy reduction with our new UV equipment, and that is proving to be true so far.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to public delegations. Anyone in the public who would like to come up and speak on anything not on the agenda? Come on up, Matthew.
Just wanted to say something quickly. I was reading on the town website, which is, it's a decent website. It's a busy one. It's a good quality website. It updates weekly. 2 comments. The Medibuds proposal, Madam Chair, I think what we're dealing with this cannabis, marijuana, hemp industry has a lot of potential for industrial, commercial uses. And I don't see this this product being just something to smoke. I have a family member right now who is getting some treatment for skin cancer. And, it's very scary when you see someone in a state of unwell, physically sick. It's actually quite frightening. And I see things in social media and some books and other things that talk about like stabilization of cancer, the precautions of skin cancer. I know there's a medicine available currently at the Natural Health Food Store that contains some level cannabinoid oil, which I think we must see as something that's a future opportunity for medical treatment, prevention, such as skin cancer.
Yeah,
And I just wanted to recommend that. I think that's a good thing.
Can I just ask you to, just if you can bring your comments specific to what we can do in terms of planning for the municipality, or if there's something you think we can do better, we'd love to hear about that.
Sure, I know that's a sensitive, it's quite a sensitive thing from a medical standpoint, medically. The second part, I want to say thank you to Director McDonald and to Nancy Farrar and team for this bus system we have. I think it's amazing. I've been riding the bus to Blue Mountain. What a great service, the all-day service. I've seen so many people on the bus midday going shopping at the superstore. It's really well being used. Is it possible to ask a quick question? What would this new line constitute if we see a transition with Simcoe County Links? Do we have any idea what the town route might be?
The extra one proposed?
Yeah, or is that too early?
I think that would probably go through another public process.
Yeah, maybe it's too early to.
Yeah, it would be premature at this point.
Yeah, I'm just curious. But hey, there's an interesting adaptation there, that we might see another route based upon this linkage with the county, and that's another great thing. I think the town's doing really well. I'm really impressed with the town, and I honestly think we're on an amazing footing for a lot of progress. I see good things.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew. We'll pass that along to all our staff. Appreciate your comments. Okay, so other business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, it was just one question relating back to the departmental updates and to Director McDonald. I'm glad to hear we're getting out with the street sweepers early this year after last year, and probably don't need to say this, but I was going to ask if we're going to be targeting the cycle routes to the extent possible when we first get out there.
Through Madam Chair, we've already run all but Ontario Street and taken the bulk of the sand off of the bike lanes. So as soon as the weather permits, probably in the next day or two, we'll have all the bike lanes done.
Great, thank you very much.
Right, in terms of other business, I had one item I wanted to talk about if no one else has anything else under this. I had spoken with our CAO earlier today, and it resulted from our last meeting in terms of we had the request of the DC's deferral through the consent agenda process. And I think that my comment would be through to the CAO and to the clerk and to the Director of Planning, probably not just for those departments, but other departments, that those kinds of requests that come in on a consent agenda should automatically be referred to a committee, because I think that way we have a better opportunity to have staff as information in order, and then we can have a better handle on the questions we need to be asking. So I thought I'd bring that up here, and I know that staff will hear it, and I don't think that's something procedurally probably we need to address to be able to accomplish it. Deputy Clerk, what do you think? Okay, all right, so I just want to bring that up because I was really kicking myself last Tuesday that I just didn't ask for that letter to be referred to committee so we could do more work on it. So that was my comment on that. So if there's nothing else, then who would like to move adjournment? Councillor Hamlin, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for your work.